For years, he went where no one else dared, plunging into black, predator-filled waters in search of creatures most people swore were just legends. He faced teeth like knives, currents that could tear a boat apart, and dangers that didn't just lurk beneath the surface. And then, at the height of his fame, it was over. No warning, no farewell tour, just silence. What could force a man to walk away from a mission he'd risked his life for? The answer isn't scandal, and it isn't failure. In fact, it might be the most shocking reason of all. When the news broke, fans scrambled for answers. Some blamed network politics. Others whispered about hidden dangers or unspoken health issues. A few even speculated he'd uncovered something too disturbing to air. After all, this was a man who had stared down the world's deadliest freshwater predators. If he was walking away, it had to be serious. But the truth was far stranger. There was no scandal, no ratings drop, and no burnout. He simply ran out of monsters. For nearly a decade, he'd carried a personal monster list. Legendary creatures whispered about in fishing villages, feared in local folklore, and doubted by science. Every episode wasn't just a TV show, it was a strike through another name on that list. By the time the final season rolled around, that list was complete. It was an ending almost no one saw coming. In a world where shows drag on long past their prime, he did something unheard of. He finished the mission. But finishing the mission didn't mean the danger stopped. Some of those hunts had pushed him further than anyone realized. And behind the cameras, the stakes were even higher. Long before the cameras rolled, the mission had already begun. He wasn't chasing random catches for the thrill of television. Every journey was calculated, every destination chosen with one goal in mind: to cross another name off a secret, personal bucket list. This wasn't an ordinary list. These were creatures wrapped in shadow, feared killers, whispered about by locals for generations, often dismissed by scientists as myths. Some were massive enough to drag a man underwater without a ripple. Others were small but terrifyingly cunning, striking in ways few could imagine. Each name on that list carried a story: a fisherman's disappearance in India, a capsized canoe in the Amazon, a sudden unexplained death in a remote African village. These weren't just fishing trips, they were investigations into the darker corners of human fear. And with every catch, the stakes grew higher. Locals would warn him not to go further. Guides would refuse to follow, yet he pressed on, knowing the most dangerous creatures were often the hardest to find. But danger in the water was only half the story. What happened on land was sometimes far more threatening. Some hunts became instant legends. In the Congo River Basin, he pursued the Goliath tigerfish, a nightmare with fangs the size of human fingers and the speed to match a barracuda. Locals swore it had torn nets to shreds and dragged men under in seconds. Political unrest and crocodile-infested waters made the journey almost suicidal. But he went anyway, and came back holding a monster that didn't need any explanation. In the flooded forests of the Amazon, he hunted the armored arapaima, a 10-foot, 400-pound predator known for breaking ribs with a single thrash. The air was thick with mosquitoes, venomous snakes dangled overhead, and the canoe beneath him groaned under its own weight. Yet in those suffocating waters, he found his quarry. Then there was the goonj catfish in India, a river phantom accused of pulling full-grown men to their deaths. He camped along its murky banks, piecing together eyewitness accounts like a detective, until one night the water erupted and the legend surfaced. Each hunt was a mix of science, instinct, and risk. But while the creatures themselves were dangerous, the paths to find them often put him in greater peril than any set of teeth could. And that's where the untold dangers of filming began to reveal themselves. On screen, it looked like pure adventure. Daring battles with monstrous fish in wild, untouched waters. Off camera, it was something else entirely. Every expedition began months in advance, and danger often arrived long before they reached the riverbank. In Papua New Guinea, a single mosquito bite left him bedridden with dengue fever, halting production for weeks. Deep in the Amazon, the crew found themselves days from the nearest road, hauling heavy camera gear through crocodile-infested channels with no medical help in sight. One wrong step on a rotting canoe plank could have been the end. And then there was the political risk. In parts of Africa, armed guards warned them about rebel activity. Once their vehicle was stopped at a checkpoint near a restricted zone, one misunderstanding away from disaster. Sometimes the real predators weren't in the water. Weather was equally merciless. Blistering heat could warp camera equipment, while sudden monsoon floods could sweep away camps overnight. Yet the crew kept going, driven by the chance to document something the world had never seen. But as seasons passed, finding new genuine monsters became harder. The list was shrinking. He refused to fake a story. Every hunt had to be real. And that decision, as much as any danger in the wild, set the clock ticking toward the end. When the final episode aired, fans were stunned. They'd expected another season, maybe even a spin-off. Instead, the announcement landed like a stone in still water. The mission was over. But what happened next was rare. There was no outrage, no petitions demanding a return. Instead, social media exploded with respect. A single Reddit post went viral. River monsters ended because Jeremy Wade literally caught them all. Comments poured in by the thousands. One read, "This man completed the real-life Pokemon quest." Another simply said, "That's the most badass reason a show has ever ended." Memes spread just as fast. Wade standing knee-deep in a river with captions like, "Even Google had to ask him for answers." Fan tributes flooded Facebook fishing groups, conservation pages, and forums from Brazil to the UK. Some credited the show with sparking their love for biology. Others admitted they came for the thrill, but stayed for the science. The most common reaction? Pride. Viewers weren't disappointed, they were grateful. In a world where TV shows often end in scandal or slow decline, this one ended in triumph. And yet, one question lingered everywhere. If he had truly caught them all, what would he do next? Retirement? Not even close. The end of River Monsters wasn't a farewell, it was a pivot. With the legendary list complete, he set his sights on darker, stranger mysteries. In 2019, he launched Dark Waters, a series that swapped monster lore for chilling real-world puzzles, mass fish die-offs, unexplained disappearances, and eerie environmental shifts. One episode sent him into Florida's Indian River Lagoon, where thousands of fish were vanishing overnight. Another took him to the Arctic, chasing the ghost story of a sunken Soviet submarine. The tone was different now. It wasn't just about danger in the water. It was about uncovering the hidden systems shaping life on Earth, political, biological, even psychological. Then came Mysteries of the Deep, where the scope widened even further. Missing ships, bizarre sonar readings, ancient ruins swallowed by the sea. Even without battling a monster on camera, his narration carried the same tension. The sense that something was always lurking just beyond sight. But there was a shift in purpose too. He was no longer just catching creatures, he was protecting them. Conservation became a core mission, using his platform to highlight the fragile ecosystems he'd once hunted through. And yet, the question still lingered. Had he truly found them all? Or were there monsters still waiting deep below the surface, beyond even his reach? Few shows leave behind a legacy like River Monsters. From the first episode, it proved that science could feel like an adventure novel. Each journey starting with whispers and ending with undeniable proof. It pulled in people who had never watched a nature program before and made them care about rivers, ecosystems, and the creatures that live in them. But perhaps the greatest shift was in perception. The monsters were never villains, they were survivors, ancient, adapted, and essential to their environments. By showing their stories, he turned fear into fascination and myth into respect. Many species featured on the show went on to receive more scientific study, and in some cases, urgent conservation efforts. He also gave a voice to those often ignored in modern science, the local fishermen, elders, and villagers whose stories form the backbone of every investigation. By valuing their knowledge, he bridged folklore and fieldwork, proving both had a place in understanding the natural world. When the final credits rolled, it wasn't an ending, it was a challenge. Curiosity doesn't stop when the list runs out. It evolves. Somewhere in some forgotten river, a ripple may still be hiding something no one has seen. And when it surfaces, maybe he'll be there, calm, focused, and ready to meet it face to face. Because the water never stops moving. And neither does the mystery. If you love uncovering the stories the world's waters are still hiding, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Because the next mystery might just be the most unbelievable one yet. You won't want to miss it.